Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. I'm sure by now many Nebraska fans have heard the news about former four-star wide receiver Malachi Coleman. Sounds like he's leaving the Nebraska program, going to enter the transfer portal when it opens up on December 9th. I'm not getting up here to break news. Y'all know that's not what I do. I more want to have the conversation of what went wrong with Malachi Coleman, and we're not going to make assumptions about what happened with inside the program. I think the conversation I want to get more at is this is a coaching staff problem. From an outside perspective looking in, you get quite frankly, a freak of nature athlete in Malachi Coleman, right? 6'5", 200 pounds, runs a 10.46 in the 100-meter dash. I mean, these kind of kids do not grow on trees. We knew Malachi Coleman was a little bit more of a developmental prospect when he committed to Nebraska. But at the end of year two, him not finding the football field and not getting to develop into a wide receiver that can be serviceable or at least play a role within this Nebraska offense, to me, from an outsider looking at this situation, it tells me a little bit more about, this coaching staff just not doing a good enough job. And I know there's a lot of heat around Coach McGuire. Matt Rule took some risks when he took over this Nebraska program, right? Hired Coach Satterfield, a guy that he's worked with in the past, although kind of had a questionable last couple stops, specifically at South Carolina, goes out and hires one of the youngest position coaches at the Power 4 level in Coach McGuire. I think there's going to be a deep evaluation of this offensive coaching staff by Matt Rule during this offseason. I think it all kind of culminated with, Matt Rule brings in Dana Holgerson off the streets, essentially, who's working at TCU, but not within this Nebraska program, to come in and call plays. That was a more interesting move than we gave it credit for. That is, I wouldn't use the term desperate, but it is a move that tells you that he does not have a lot of confidence in what's going on the offensive side of the football with the coaching staff. This is kind of where I want to take this conversation. Now, before we get into it, as always, the Nebraska fans would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I think there are so many different ways to look at this situation. I got kind of a laundry list of things that I want to talk about, kind of keep me on schedule, if you will. But I understand my opinion might not be right. My opinion might not align with a lot of other Nebraska fans. And I would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Without further ado, let's get into it now. Kind of zeroing in on the Malachi Coleman situation. Yes, was he seemingly not available to practice a lot? And at the end of the day, if you can't practice, you ain't going to play. And I understand there were some injuries that were going on. And I understand that we knew Malachi Coleman would be a slow burn. This was a guy that, quite frankly, coming out of high school, I wouldn't have hated to see him kind of become an edge rusher. And I know he probably would have had to change a little bit of the body comp, put on a little bit more weight. His film coming off the edge rush and the passer was kind of some next level stuff. And so he was kind of a freaky athlete that could play multiple different positions for this Nebraska team on both sides of the football, decided to play wide receiver. And we saw him, really show us some good things as a true freshman, specifically working vertically down the field. And this is something that, I'm kind of surprised that we'd not seen more of a part in this Nebraska offense. You look at Dylan as a quarterback and say, what does he do best? He pushed the ball down the field. His deep ball is one of the best deep balls that we see in the country. I'm very confident saying that. And I understand he's missed some of those throws in 2024. But at the end of the day, you go back to his high school stuff like that. That's where he excels. And you kind of looked at Malachi Coleman and say, yeah, that could be a phenomenal fit for Dylan at the quarterback position. I think the second thing is when you saw Malachi play as a true freshman, him blocking on the perimeter is pretty damn impressive. He's big, he's long, he can get hands on opposing defensive backs, and he did try to block. And that's something that you look at 2024, like these Nebraska wide receivers. We just saw Dana Holgerson rip them to the media, saying they're not getting a good enough job blocking on the perimeter. And so I look at Malachi Coleman and say, we don't really know what's happening inside of the doors and walls of the Nebraska program, but as an outsider looking in, this seems like a little bit more of a malpractice of the coaching staff not figuring out a way to get this kid on the football field. And with the new rules about redshirting, they can play in 4 games and maintain that redshirt. So even if you wanted to redshirt him, which I think would make sense, and I think Nebraska would have wanted to redshirt him as a freshman if they could have, but obviously with the injuries they couldn't. I think they wanted to always have him for 5 years. And that makes sense because this kid we knew was going to be a developmental prospect. Why not try to get him on the football field? We just saw Nebraska, Matt Rule go, I would say, to desperate measures to try to fix this Nebraska offense by taking somebody who was not even in the building for this Nebraska program and bring him into the program to call plays less than 14 days after being hired. So we've seen Nebraska try to find answers on the offensive side of the football. You have a kid like this on your roster. To me, looking into this program, I don't get why you wouldn't have given him a shot and at least seen what he could provide to this Nebraska offense. And we'll see. There's a lot that needs to play out for Nebraska, and I'm sure we're going to get more information on this situation as it goes. And quite frankly, I was considering just not even talking about it, but I kind of did want to highlight that a lot of the conversations going around Malachi Coleman, where the way I look at it, I'm starting to look at the coaching staff and saying this to me seems like a really big failure for Nebraska coaching staff. I mean, if you are a good coach, and we talk about this all the time, what does it look like to be a good coach on either side of the football? It's taking good athletes, making them good football players, figuring out ways where they can help your football team. I don't see how you couldn't figure out a way to get Malachi Coleman on the field, whether it was a starting capacity, whether it was 10 plays a game. I don't see how you couldn't figure out a way in year two to get Malachi Coleman on the football field and have him help this team. That's kind of where it comes down for me. Again, would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. That I think it has a lot more to do with the coaching staff and my question marks there than Malachi Coleman. We'll see how this plays out. I'm guessing we're going to see some significant changes for Nebraska on the offensive side of the football. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later.